Okay, so we are going to start up. This composition webinar is brought to you by CJW Music and Cody John Weinmann. CJW Music, that's what it stands for, Cody John Weinmann Music. And we are going to talk about various things today. Basically, how to write, how to write music quickly. So a lot of times I tend to be a slower writer myself, but typically what first starts is melody starts first. I will come up with, a melody or two, and then I will build on top of that melody by putting chords under this and different features, different dress ups of different things. In fact, this is an example of what I just finished today for a friend. I just submitted it to publisher as well. So let's see. It's called a Christmas tune. So this is one of several Christmas pieces that I'll do. But this started off with one of the main melodies. So let's put that in there. All right, let's try that again. How do I go? I will go and stop the share, and let's do another share because I have to remember to put this sound on. So here we are, a Christmas tune. So here we go. I'm going to start playing from the beginning. Let's see. Hopefully you guys can hear that. There you go, and there's the thing. I'm not really sure why the flute audio is so minute on this, but there is a flute melody going on, and usually when you first start, like in this piece, for example, you would first start with your melody over here. I'm just going to do a default document, and you put it. So we can do this. We could say you heard this melody. That melody is actually a very common Christmas themed melody. Ba, 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 ba. It's like a Christmas bells. So I use that as melody portion number 1, and then I continue that with a dovetailing and make it extend it out a little bit. And usually you have alignment of intervals. Usually what this means is you've got a fourth that starts from C to G, and then a second from G to A, and then another fourth from A to E. So you've got fourth, second, fourth, fourth, second, fourth, and that melodic pattern is a sequence. It's what's called a sequence in music theory. So you would have all of those different elements in a melody that is sequential. So we would have these. This is the first melodic part that I used. And you'd probably heard me use this. Somewhere in there. So that melody. So you have these two melody parts. And those I use interspersed throughout both the flute and the piano parts. So usually pick a melody. When you compose a melody, compose it simple first. You know, don't try to write something that's going to be crazy hard. Um, and typically, sometimes I will sing to myself different melodies before I put down the melody that I will use. In this case, we already had a Christmas themed melody in mind, so that's why I put that first one on there right there. And then this is just one that I thought would be a great antithesis to this. So this one is the opposite of this one. So those are the two melodies that I used, and then I just put chords underneath, you know, like a march almost. You know, probably not exactly like that, but then I would just do all these. And then goes from C to F. That's a common chord progression in these. I'm doing sort of a plagal cadence there. You know, so you can jazz this up with chords that'll support these melody forms. There are a couple times actually where I drop the chords in both the piano and the flute and just do the first melody part, and I put accents on this because I want it to shine out. I want it to be very heavily pressed upon. And I even put in the piece, I even put, you know, singing out like church bells or sing out like clock bells is what I called them, or whatever you can call that. Um, and it's very important to actually have a very descriptive way in which when you're writing at least classical music or even rock and jazz, it's good to have a way to, you know, not only use musical terminology, but break the musical terminology down into uh, language that the layman understands. And I think we musicians, we struggle a lot to do that, but it's becoming a mission of mine to actually do that more often than not, and to put, you know, different things into play here. So I wanted to give you guys some tips on how to write quickly, and this piece was actually composed really fast. Um, took maybe 2 or 3 days of just ironing out specifics and then composing the work. And I've used a lot of different techniques. For instance, I would use a lot of runs in the piano. I would use a lot of uh, call and response in various parts between the piano and the flute. Call and response is a really good composition technique. One asks a musical question, the other asks an answer, or answers that musical question by playing an episodic sort of melodic thing. Um, a lot of times the piano and the flute would duet together, and sometimes they would play the same thing and just have accented all the way through. um, Instances where you have um, imitation include this one. If I could put it on there. Usually there's an annotate feature. So usually there's annotate. Annotate. Let's see. I want to be able to mark this. Like here is go to the main tool palette. Here's one such entrance that has the piano starts it off. Piano starts it off, and then the flute continues it to the end. So you have piano starts it, flute finishes it. That's imitation. There are other instances of imitation. Um, Here, piano is imitating in chords what the flute does in single notes. So you have those. You have imitation here between both parts of the piano. And also it's good to have various parts being played by the flute while the piano plays accompaniment, and then have various parts be picked up by the piano um, when the flute needs a breath or some breaths to drop out. When I first composed my first band piece, I made the score too thickly arranged, and so there was too many clashes. There were too many entrances in the music for people, and it became sort of a muddy mixture. So what you want to do when you compose is you want to make something that, you know, the flute and the piano in this case, or whatever instruments you have, trade off. And you have one instrument doing melody over here, the other instrument doing some version of the melody over here. They don't have to be completely imitators, but there has to be some characteristics of um, uh, the melodic material that you want to use in both. Now, one of the things that I had trouble with when I was composing the band piece was also I would actually come up with more composition material than was needed. And I've found recent years that you don't really need a lot of composition material. This basically has two main, uh, two or three main attributes in this piece. And one of them is the runs that you see throughout, and then you have um, the ba-da-da-da, that Christmas melody that weaves its way throughout, and then you've got the march-like tempo. So there's like three or four different things that all make this piece a cohesive unit. And so that's one thing when you're studying composition, is you'll learn about the structure being cohesive, using basically one thing and generating across multiple different guises or wavelengths. One thing you want to do is you want to come up with your first piece of composition material. Let's say that's there, and then let's come up with a second piece. So these are our melodic pieces, and then we have our chordal pieces, which I'm going to just make them boxes. So those are our chordal elements. And then for this, I'm going to make sort of a slur, if it'll allow me to make a slur on this. So let me draw. This will be my symbol for overarching format, which basically means, okay, imitation here, all these curved lines are all the imitation or episodic things that happen within the melody. So a lot of times it's important to pick up musical patterns, not only when you're playing music, but also when you're writing, so that it doesn't keep going into oblivion with the number of melodic ideas and such that you come up with. You have to call it a day at some point, and you have to use imitation in some spots. You have to use um, uh, different melodic materials, different harmonic materials as well. So let's go over that. So melodic material comes first. Oops. Pick one or two main melodic phrases. Then put your chordal elements reuse different stylings or guises of each melodic material, melody or melodic material. Intersperse these textures with transitional material, and that's i.e. call and response, question and answer, which is basically the same thing, and imitation. Whoop. Oh, the whiteboard's not. I'll just continue it over here, imitation, and etc. So how to compose quickly, that would be this. So I would just first basically sketch the melody, that comes first. Pick one or two main melodic phrases to use. Then put your chordal elements underneath them. So the chordal elements we view, like say here's our melody here. bum, bum, da da da, right there. And then you've got this rectangle, these rectangles underneath. Those are your harmonic supports. And those actually help secure or support the melody in its framework here. And then you've got the different guises of the melody, like imitation or episodic things, transitional material, like it says here. You want all of these elements to work together whenever you compose a piece of music. And it doesn't matter if it's a classical piece, whether it's jazz piece, whether it's a song. The songs actually, they can come in various forms as well. They can have the ABA form. Uh, they can have any different type of form that one could compose. They could have verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, or they can have just the chorus, then bridge, chorus. There's many different formations of how you can put, but there's always a main melody, a main lyrical with a melody format, and then the chords come underneath, and then we reuse the stylings or guises of each of those, and they intersperse those textures with any sort of transitional material that can quickly glue them to each other. All right, and so that's how to compose pretty quickly. And that's how I was able to do this, was I just did a few simple, three simple melodic types of material and put chords underneath. And then I did a bunch of transition material to basically connect those two or three melodic ideas that I had together. And that's how you come up with pieces of music basically on the fly. Um, Typically for larger scale works, you require more time, but this actually is a good example of like just plowing right through, having a couple of principal things, and then using those to your advantage. All right. So if anybody has any questions, this will be on YouTube on my composer channel for all of you to figure on watching. And if you guys have anything whatsoever, anything in the comments, please go for it. And I will see you when I do another composition webinar. And this is Cody Weinmann, Composition Online. And this was how to compose quickly.